Chapter 60. The sky was gloomy, the afternoon wind carried a cool breeze. On the deserted street, a young girl wearing a hoodie with a hood covering most of her snow-white face. She was sitting on the white-painted railing, her face was obscured so it was not clear, except for her bright blue eyes that seemed to be burning with a cold ice flame. Seeing Belch looking at her, the girl lazily tilted her head, a careless smile on her lips, reaching out her hand, her slender white fingers gesturing towards him. In silence, she seemed to be saying, "Trash." Belch should have been angry at being provoked, but when he looked at the girl with unrealistically white skin, he unconsciously took 2 steps back. Henry noticed his movements, the boy who was crawling on the ground turned his head, also saw the girl sitting on the railing looking down from above. He saw the girl's gesturing hand that had not yet been retracted, stood up, and pushed Belch away in dissatisfaction. "Is she cursing me?" Belch's lips moved slightly, Henry couldn't help but curse a few words, angrily rushing up the hill but was stopped by Belch. Belch looked at the motionless girl on the railing, swallowing his saliva. Henry turned around and punched Belch. "Fuck, you're protecting that bitch now. Because she's your sister." "Fuck, I knew it." He was punched by Henry, but Belch with his thin body didn't dare say anything when he saw Henry's muscular body in front of him. He endured the humiliation of being beaten in front of Siddle, trying to pull Henry down the mountain. "It's late now, if you don't go back, you'll definitely get into trouble with your father." Belch felt that the girl sitting on the railing was very scary, he had a bad feeling that if Henry rushed up there, something might happen, but he didn't dare tell Henry, he could only coax him and pull him away. Before leaving the valley, Belch looked back and saw the girl still clinging to the railing, her skin was so white that it was almost transparent and she didn't look like a normal person. Belch didn't dare to look any further, he pulled Henry and quickly left. It wasn't until the other 3 boys had all gone home that Belch dragged his tired body home. In front of the villa, he recalled the scene when he met Siddle earlier, hesitating at the door for a long time before reaching out to open it. Belch saw the girl sitting on the living room sofa. He hesitated for a moment and then walked into the house. When he passed the sofa, he saw Siddle was playing the TV, was watching an American family entertainment show. A tall male host in a doll costume bent down to play a game with a group of dolls sitting around him. "Kids, now the game begins. Who wants to be first? The first good kid gets the prize." A doll with dry, straw-blonde hair sat on the ground, making a mechanical sound. "I want to be the first, Uncle Joe Marrow." It even prolonged the sound at the end. Belch was slightly stunned. He looked at the girl sitting on the sofa who seemed to be watching very intently, remembering that yesterday she was also concentrating on watching the social crime news with the same look. His mood couldn't help but be confused. During the day she watched crime/murder/perverts, at night she watched children's cartoons. This girl's interests were also quite diverse. Belch intended to quietly go upstairs, but Siddle had already discovered him. The girl stretched her slender wrist, picked up the tablet on the table, looked at him and said, "Come here." Belch was alert. "What do you want to do?" He remembered that Julie and the others were supposed to come to cause trouble for Siddle today, but looking at her appearance, Julie and the others were probably in big trouble. "Come here." The girl frowned impatiently. Belch thought for a moment, then slowly walked over, saw Siddle reach out and pull out a tissue and hand it to him. "Wipe the blood off your face." "Belch." He touched his face, guessing that Henry had punched him until his nose bled. The stubborn 16 or 17-year-old boy immediately blushed, thinking about Siddle seeing him being beaten but not daring to fight back. His face became hot again. The girl's slender figure was pressed against the sofa. In the living room there was only a small light on. Under the dim light, her eyes were cold, her expression indifferent. Belch took the tissue and wiped it, not knowing if it was clean or not, only feeling a pain in his nose. Siddle pointed at the sofa. "Sit down." Although her attitude was still extremely arrogant, looking like the hostess, Belch was no longer in the mood to argue, so he obediently sat down. Then he saw Siddle open the tablet. Her blue eyes seemed to glow as the light from the screen hit her. Siddle glanced at him coldly. "You're friends, What are their names? Belch. Henry, Hawks, and Richie. Yes, Siddle nodded. That's them. Give me the contact information of the parents behind. Belch suddenly became alert. What do you want to do? Immediately, he received an impatient look and a contemptuous smile from the girl. Come here, look. The blonde-haired white girl held the tablet in front of her and said, What are you pretending for, my dear brother? Belch gulped nervously, horrified to find that the girl with red, swollen eyes on the tablet screen was Julie. In the video, she was accusing him and Henry's children of each evil act one by one. After watching the video for a while, his face turned pale. He suddenly realized why Henry's father was glaring at the two of them when he brought him home. With Henry's father's hot temper, would Henry be able to go to school tomorrow? Sister, his voice trembled, and he pointed at Siddle, unable to speak, but was brushed off by the impatient girl. What are you pointing at me for? Is this your attitude towards me? Hey, seeing that Belch didn't say anything, Siddle seemed to be getting more and more impatient. She stood up, stepped on the sofa next to him, the corners of her mouth curled up, revealing a strange smile, and looked Belch up and down with an appraising gaze. Your pitiful appearance right now is just like a dog that was kicked on the street but didn't dare to fight back. No, you're not even as good as a dog. Look at the blood on your nose. With such a stupid appearance, you still want to learn from others and fight. If you want to be a big brother, instead of staying by Henry's side and letting him beat you up and vent his anger, why don't you kneel down and beg me to teach you? Teach you? She patted Belch's cheek, looking affectionate and sympathetic, but her tone was full of sarcasm. If you're in a good mood, I don't mind giving you charity, teaching you a little. Belch was stunned by the scolding. He looked at the girl who had suddenly changed in front of him in disbelief, his pupils dilated in horror. Perhaps seeing that Belch was too panicked, the blonde girl with snow-white skin pulled her long hair behind her ears, revealing a pair of uniquely shaped silver metal earrings. She lazily touched her earrings, smiling maliciously. Guess what I did in school before? Belch. Outstanding moral character and academic performance, dignified and elegant, beautiful and generous. His mother had lied to him. The emotion that had just ignited was extinguished. The 16 or 17-year-old platinum-haired boy stubbornly gritted his teeth. It seemed that he would rather die than surrender. I won't betray them. Belch was already prepared to fight or be beaten, but contrary to his expectations, Siddle did not persist in pressing for a confession. Those blue eyes were staring at him, eyes as deep as a bottomless lake. Belch found that the blonde girl's skin in front of him was almost transparent under the light. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt nervous, but after a few breaths, Siddle straightened up and raised his hand to turn off the TV. Whatever. She restored her indifferent expression. Her tired appearance did not even look at him as she turned and went upstairs. Only Belch was still sitting on the sofa. After Siddle left, he breathed a sigh of relief, looking up at the dim ceiling in confusion. Half an hour later, Belch came to Siddle's room. He squatted at the door until he heard the girl enter the bathroom and close the door, then he tiptoed to open the door and go in. Belch went to find the tablet. He hadn't finished watching Julie's confession video, and he felt uneasy. He didn't dare confront Siddle directly, so he could only secretly rummage through his things. He didn't see the tablet on the table, so he tried opening the drawer to take a look. The bottom drawer was locked. Belch couldn't open it. He tried to open the top drawer, but instead of seeing the tablet, he saw a thick, tightly wrapped notebook. Belch hesitated. He remembered that the first thing Siddle took out when she came here on the first day was this notebook and a square box. Driven by curiosity, he slowly opened the notebook. Belch was stunned. As he flipped through the notebook, the boy's face gradually turned pale. The speed at which he flipped the pages became faster and faster, only slowing down when he flipped to the end. The notebook was filled with notes carefully written in 3 colors of black, red, and blue ink. The latest page was a news report on the disappearances in Derry Town. The owner of the notebook had collected various information from somewhere, going back to the 1960s. The data proved that every 27 years, there would be a high frequency of missing child cases in this town. The number of missing and murdered children in Derry was 6 times the national average. Below that was another calculation, this year, the 27-year cycle. But Belch had never heard of this before. His hands were shaking with tension as he turned the page, seeing a photo of a murderer taped to the paper, with a brief description of his life, his murder patterns, his murder methods, including his weapon habits, and next to it was a time of death of 3 o'clock yesterday morning. Belch. How do you know the time of death so well? The page before that was about a murder at Crystal Lake near Derry. Turning back to the previous page, in an abandoned town not far from Derry, passers-by often disappeared and mysterious cases remained unsolved. His speed of flipping through the book increased, the notebook was filled with bloody and horrifying events. Some events were even detailed enough to include photos of the crime scene. Belch even saw on one page of the notebook, the owner of the notebook made a guess about the murderer based on the body. It was filled with photos of intact or dissected bodies from many angles along with numbers. Before Belch had time to think about why Siddle knew so much, he saw her guess about the murderer on the next page. Estimated height by eye is about 1.78 meters, weight 75 kilograms. The murder weapon was a machete. From the cut on the victim's chest, one can see a vertical wound, penetrating the chest and ribs, a fatal blow. The most shocking part is the back. Next to the clear texture, seemingly hand-drawn, of a dead human anatomy photo. If it were me, I wouldn't consider using a knife to slash, it would be disadvantageous when destroying the murder weapon. The wound is deep at the front and shallow at the back, probably not from much force. With this angle, slashing from the lower abdomen upwards would easily cause the person to lose the ability to resist, possibly pulling out the intestines, assuming the victim didn't have a weapon in hand. Belch looked at the bloody photos and those horrible notes in horror. Why did Siddle know so clearly and in such detail? Belch's face paled as he remembered Siddle's expressions that made him feel scared, along with the notebook that he could tell was not written by someone with a normal mentality. Could it be that his sister was a perverted murderer?